Welcome back. So this video is going to be pretty quick. I'm going to show you something called module.exports, which is going to help us clean up our code and make it more modular. And then I'll show you how we can use module.exports to clean up the code that we just wrote, which is the references.js file, this one here. Currently it's a long file that has our Mongoose code up top, then we have the post schema and model, and then the user schema and model, and then all of our subsequent code where we're using those models. What we're going to do is break this out into separate files. So the post code here, all the stuff to make the schema and the model, will be its own file that we can require. Just like we are requiring Mongoose here, we can do the same thing. It won't work just yet, but we can do something like var post equals require, and then we'll have post.js. That's not exactly the syntax, but it will be a require statement. And we'll do the same thing for the user. So why would we do this? There's two answers. First one is that it will help us clean up our code and shorten this. So we'll get rid of all of this and move it to separate files. But also it helps us make our code more modular. And if I wanted to have another application that used the same user model or another file that used it, I wouldn't have to duplicate the code. I could just require the code in that file as well. So two main goals. We will be using what I'm about to show you to also modularize our app.js inside of the Yelp Camp application. This is getting pretty long. We have a bunch of routes. We have all of the model code up here, and this will continue to grow as we get more and more models. So after this video, I'm going to show you how we can clean this up. But to start, we're going to work with this references.js file. And the first thing I'm going to do is move all of this code that relates to creating the model, the post model, and I'll move that to a new file, and I'm going to make a new directory first called models. And the file will be models/post.js. And then while I'm here, I'll also do models/user.js, just like that. Okay, and then I'll open both of those up. Let's start with post, models/post.js. Okay, and we can paste that code in. And the first thing you'll notice is that we now have an error. It's telling us that Mongoose is not defined. So we can start by defining Mongoose. And this is something that you just have to do if you're modularizing your code. If you're splitting it up into small pieces, you're going to have to require things a lot more often. So we require Mongoose, and there's one major change we need to make, which is that we need to use module.exports down here, which I like to think of as a return value for a file. So just like with the return value in a function, nothing is returned unless we explicitly tell JavaScript what we want to return out of the function. Same thing with a file. If we just include the file, but we don't export anything out of it, we'll actually be including nothing. We'll be requiring just an empty file. What we need to do is export something, and what we want to export is the model. So I'm just going to copy that and say module.exports equals mongoose.model post. So we're declaring the schema, and then we're declaring the model, and that's what we're sending out. We could also have done this and then said module.exports equals post. Either one would work, but I'm going to do it just in one swoop here. So we'll get rid of this and add this back down here. Okay, so now let's see how we require this file inside references.js. I'm going to comment out pretty much everything else for now. We'll keep the user schema there, but I'm going to get rid of all of this just so that we're not running anything. All I want to do is make sure that we can import this code. So it's going to be var post equals require, and the file is post.js. We can just refer to it as post, but it's inside the model directory, so models/post. And let's save and try running this file and see what happens. So node references.js, and we get a small error, and it tells us cannot find module models/post. And that's because we're missing one key thing. When we're referencing file paths and directories in Node, to reference the current directory, we need a ./, and that will reference where we currently are, which is associations. And then we want to access the models directory and then the post file inside of that. Now let's clear the terminal, try that again. This time, it looks like it worked. We don't see anything, which is a good sign. We shouldn't see anything with the code that we have here. Okay, so let's close out of this. And now we'll do the exact same thing for the user code. So we're going to take all of this, cut it out, and then open up the user.js file So that's going to be C9 models/user.js. And we'll put this code in here. Once again, we need to import mongoose. So var mongoose equals require mongoose, and save that. And then we're going to do module.exports equals the mongoose.model that we're creating from user. So this will send out the model that when we require this file, this is the one thing that we're returning out, that we're exporting out to use. And this doesn't always have to be a single thing like this. We can return multiple pieces. We can make an object here and add a bunch of different bits of data, but this is an object, remember. Mongoose.model generates an object for us. So that's what we're returning. We'll save, now go back to references, and we're going to run var user equals require, and this should be dot/models/user, and let's save and make sure both of those are requiring correctly. There we go. And now let's try using it. So what we're going to do is just uncomment some of this code. We'll do this right here, which is going to make us another post with how to cook the best burger, and we'll do part 4 and some gibberish. Let's change that up a little bit. And then it's going to find the user with email bob@gmail.com, and everything else should be the same. It's going to push in that post and then console.log some data. So if everything worked out just fine, this should work, and we should see a user with some posts printed out. So let's give it a shot. There we go. We have our user, Bob Belcher, bob@gmail.com, and then we have a bunch of post IDs inside the posts array. Great. So let's recap everything. Module.exports allows us to break things into files. And the reason we'd want to do that is to clean up our code first and foremost. This makes it a lot cleaner up here, but it also makes things modular and makes it reusable. So I can have another file where I require the post or the user model, and I don't have to duplicate any code aside from this single line. In the next video, I'm going to show you how we can clean up Yelp Camp using the exact same concepts.